The weekly code quiz. What input element type is for a form using checkboxes? Input type checkbox. Since checkboxes allow a user to select multiple options, how do we maintain correct data collection? Each option must have a unique name and value. How do we bind the label element to a particular checkbox input element option? The for attribute is used to bind a label element to a particular input element option. Here is a sample code for a checkbox form. P opening tag. Check all that apply. If you don't have a pet, leave all boxes unchecked. P closing tag. Form opening tag. Input type checkbox ID pet1, name pet1, value dog. Label for pet1, I have a dog. Label closing tag, break. Input type checkbox ID pet2, name pet2, value cat. Label for pet2, I have a cat. Label closing tag, break. Input type checkbox ID pet3, name pet3, value bird. Label for pet3, I have a bird. Label closing tag, break. Input type checkbox ID pet4, name pet4, value other. Label for pet4, I have a type of pet that is not listed. Label closing tag, break break, input type submit, value submit. Form closing tag. What input type is used for a form using radio buttons? Input type radio. How are radio buttons different from checkboxes? While checkboxes are designed for users to select more than one option, with radio buttons, a user selects only one option. The other options become unselected. How do you present the form with one of the options pre-selected as the default? Add the attribute checked. Here is a sample code for a form with radio buttons. P opening tag. Do you have a pet? P closing tag. Form opening tag. Input type radio ID yes, name pet status, value yes. Label for yes. Yes. Label closing tag, break. Input type radio ID no, name pet status, value no. Label for no. No. Label closing tag, break. Input type radio ID unknown, name pet status, value unknown. Checked. Label for unknown, prefer not to say. Label closing tag, break break. Input type submit, value submit. Form closing tag. So in this example, what option is pre-selected as the default? Prefer not to say. What input type would we use for a color picker? Input type color. With a color picker, if supported, the browser will display a color picker menu automatically. Form opening tag. Label for FAV color. Select your favorite color. Label closing tag. Input type color ID FAV color. Name FAV color. Input type submit, value submit. Form closing tag. What input type is for a numeric range slider? Input type range. Here's the code for a range slider. Form opening tag. Label for volume colon, label closing tag. Input type range ID volume, name volume, form closing tag. What is the default for a range slider? The default is 0 to 100. How can you adjust the range of a range slider? By using the min and max attributes, you can change the values of a range slider. Here is the code. The code is the same except for the addition of min equals 0 and max equals 10 to the input element. How would you set a set interval in your range slider? The step attribute. Here is an example. The code here is different with the addition of the step attribute, with the step attribute equals 1. What value do you set the step attribute to accept all values along a slider? Input type range, step equals any. Here is an example. The code here is the same except for the change of the value of the step attribute to any. How do you add hash marks to the steps of your range slider when using intervals? You use the datalist element with the ID attribute matching a list attribute in our input element. Then each hash mark is set by using an option element where each value attribute is set to what the hash mark should equal. Our code for the form is the same here again, except for the addition of a list attribute with the value of tick marks. Here's the form code again. We have added a list attribute set to tick marks. Datalist ID equals tick marks, option value 0, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 1, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 2, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 3, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 4, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 5, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 6, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 7, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 8, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 9, option closing tag. Option opening tag value 10, option closing tag, data list closing tag. How do you add labels to the hash marks? The label attribute is used to add the label to the hash mark. The code here is the same except for the addition of the label attribute equals 0 to the first option, label equals 5 to the 6th option, and label equals 10 to the 11th option. Note, browser support for both hash marks and labels is inconsistent, so you still may need to add CSS or JavaScript to fully style your range slider. Presented by Designers Learn Code.